Good evening, everyone. Just give us one moment. We're going to get the technological things here working. Okay. It's pretty amazing. We have our sutra lectures going out on both YouTube and Zoom. And then we're going to have our fellow Dharma cultivator, Amitofo, to request Dharma. So, Paul, how about you wait just 30 seconds and we can begin? Okay. Welcome to have everyone. We're going to begin with our Dharma request. This is on the chat box, or you go to our berkeleymonastery.org website and go to the class webpage for the Infinite Life Sutra, and then you can find the text there. Okay, so invite everyone to put their palms together.
Will the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo Sarando Sujedoye Arahati Samma Sambuddhoje.
Namo Satando Suchedoye Arahati Samya Sambuddhoje.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay. So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Master, and all good and wise friends online, Amitofo, welcome to our Infinite Life Sutra lecture on the day before Lunar New Year, right?
Yeah,
Lunar New Year Eve. 今天是明天是初一。
对，明天是初一。
不过那个台湾或者是大陆就已经初一了。
Yeah, it's already New Year in Asia. So we were very happy to continue to lecture tonight and to look into Amitabha Buddha's 48 Great Vows. And tonight, I believe we're on vow number
39. Yeah, 39. Yeah.
在第39大愿。所以我们先开始呢，来念佛。So we begin by invoking Amitabha Buddha's name. We want to put Amitabha Buddha in our hearts, in our minds, in our bodies. And so we can just imagine the rays of Amitabha shining on us with his great kindness and great compassion.
Yeah, Amitabha 也跟我们一起过年啦。
每一年，每一分每秒，好。南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛。
诸佛菩萨、仙公上人以及在座法师，还有在线上的佛友，大家晚安，阿弥陀佛。
All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Master, and all good and wise friends online, 阿弥陀佛。
好，我们今天继续，今天是2月11号，就是金牛年，今年牛年，金牛
还没开始，明天开始。
对，明天开始，我们所以大家能够一起来研究阿弥陀佛是非常殊胜，非常什么 lucky， 就是非常幸运的，因为不简单，刚好就是今天是除夕夜。
So this is February 11th, 2021, Lunar New Year Eve here in America. And so here we get to chance to learn Amitabha Buddha's 48 Great Vows. This is, you could say, very lucky, very wonderful, supreme, being able to study the Dharma together.
所以我们今天经文是在42页、43页。
So on page 42 and 43 in the Sutra Text.
Yeah. 那这个 我们今天晚上是要来研究第39大愿，这一愿就是讲快乐这个。
So we're on vow number 39, which is on happiness. We all wish to cultivate, to nurture.
Yeah. 好，我们先来念中文一遍，然后再英文第39愿。
So read the Chinese and then English. So page 42 and 43 of the Sutra Text.
好，39受我得佛，国中人天所受快乐，不如漏尽比丘者，不取正觉。好，英文。
39. When I become a Buddha, if the humans and devas in my Buddha land do not experience happiness comparable to that of a bhikshu who has ended all outflows, I will not realize perfect awakening.
Yeah. 所以这个他这个愿是在讲这个极乐世界他们的这个国度的人民，就是所以这个法藏比丘他就是说，假如我能够成佛的话，我的国度人民呢所得到的快乐假如比不上这个漏尽比丘的话，那我就不成正觉。
So vow number 39, essentially, if you want to say it again, is Amitabha Buddha is saying, if this is not true, then he will not become a Buddha, meaning that this is true, right? This will be the case. And they think that all the beings in his land, they don't have a kind of joy and happiness, a kind of, you could say, a kind of delight in the heart that is comparable to that of here it says, a bhikshu who has ended all outflow, so this will be an arhat. So the bliss of an arhat, I will not realize perfect awakening.
像这个漏尽比丘是大概就是我们娑婆世界这里有漏尽比丘佛陀在世的时候，所以他就这样子来比较那个西方净土的国度的那个人他们的人或者是天人，他们所受的快乐的程度呢，就是会要比漏尽比丘这个快乐程度还要更快乐、更殊胜。
So here is saying that the happiness of the beings in the Pure Land are even better than the happiness of the bhikshu who has realized no outflows. 是更多吗？不是一样的，是更多。
要不如的话，这就讲应该是要更
多、
更好、更比得上。
So Chinese should be maybe do not experience happiness at least comparable. Maybe say at least comparable.
Yeah.
So it's even more than that of a bhikshu.
假如一样，或者是那个他就不要比了嘛。所以就是说要比这个其他的漏尽比丘的快乐还要更快乐就对了。所以这个是一个，因为去到极乐世界那边，其实讲起来，这个漏尽比丘他是讲没有烦恼的一个比丘，所以这个最重要。去到极乐世界，他已经是没有烦恼了。
So one important point here is a bhikshu who has no outflows has become freed from all afflictions. So when you go to the Pure Land, you have no afflictions.
所以在这个佛学日典上呢，就是漏尽比丘就是已经断烦恼，这个烦恼断尽的这个比丘，而且也是有讲断尽烦恼，就是他已经证得阿罗汉的比丘。
So this kind of monk who is able to end all outflows is one who has realize the stage of arhatship, and let go of all afflictions, all defilements.
所以我们读很多经典佛陀在世的时候，旁边的很多大阿罗汉，我们会讲大阿罗汉，像那个大迦叶啊，或者是目犍连啊，或者是舍利佛啊，这些都是落尽比丘，这些都是大阿罗汉落尽比丘。
So around the Buddha, there were often great arhats. For instance, like Venerable Mahakashyapa, Venerable Mahamagdhyana, Venerable Shariputra, and so forth. They were all great arhats that accompanied the Buddha where he went, or you could say were in part of his disciples.
所以那我们晚上也来研究一下这个漏尽比丘，它这个是什么？什么是漏？然后漏有几种？那什么才叫做漏尽？像这一些然后这个漏尽比丘的阿罗汉，他是的表现是什么？他怎样去证得阿罗汉果的？那这个我们今天就来讲他的比较详细来讲一下，然后我也找了蛮多的故事跟大家来分享。
So we can look into outflows today. For instance, how many outflows are there? How do we get free of outflows? And what does it look like once we are free of outflows? So I've looked into quite a bit of materials tonight and also have prepared quite a few stories.
那这个依照这个我们经典上或者佛学这个日典上面，他都讲这个其实这个漏它是一种梵语，就是那个印度那边的，它就是什么阿斯拉瓦，这个阿斯拉瓦它就是烦恼的意思，所以这个漏它就是一个烦恼的另外一个名字。
So asarava is the word in Sanskrit, and it means kind of affliction or defilement.
那这个漏，什么是漏呢？漏就是表示它留住泄漏，就是好像流水一样的就溜掉了。这个就是来讲呢，就是讲我们三界的有情呢，由我们的讲三界，大家知道吗？然后就是我们是有六根门头里面漏出去。
So, for instance, it can also be translated as a leak, and so it's like a leak in a bucket or something, or like a cup, and then the water leaks out of it. And so here in the three realms, the formless, form, and desire realms, which makes up our world here, living beings leak out their energy through the six sense gates, six sense doors.
所以这个，因为你一漏的时候就会产生烦恼，所以这个就是，而且这个你变成说你烦恼不止，这样子这个就会在三界里面，刚才讲的就是我们一界、受界、无受界。
So this leak basically leads to affliction, and then it goes on, kind of a cycle, kind of keeps going on and on and on with more affliction, and then we are basically stuck in samsara, stuck in the three realms.
那这个，因为你漏产生烦恼，然后这样子会知道就是烦恼引起你心里面，那就不能够专心流散了，就是说你不能把你的心事你的心就流跟着流一样的，所以这个也是，所以变成说烦恼跟心都连在一起，都留住了。 就流掉了，就这样子。
So with this leak, it goes to afflictions, and then you end up having a lot of problems. And so our minds and these shravas are actually linked together.
所以他这样讲这个漏呢，就是东西没有办法hold住，然后就流掉了，就跟屋子一样的，就是屋子里面，我们的房屋也是，你没有好屋顶弄好的话，也会漏水这一些的。所以这个在这个基手论里面讲呢，就是从天上一直到无间地狱呢，因为有这个这样子相续的这个六道门，我们的六道门都一直在泄，没有去无究，就是说你没有去研究把它阻止，这个就是一种漏这样子。
So it's like a container that has holes in it, and we haven't protected it so that it constantly leaks out. Or like you think of a house, and the house isn't well protected, so things keep leaking into it. And so for us, one of the shastras, it talks about how living beings are basically all caught up in samsara because of our six sense doors: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind.
所以这个漏啊，就是非常不好的，然后它产生的这个污染也很广，所以这个就是说，我们它这个是一种过失，算这个漏就是算一种过失。
So this outflow is really not good. It ends up causing us to become very deluded and say polluted, if you want. You know, we no longer see things clearly when we have afflictions. So it's actually quite harmful. And so this is not a skillful state at all.
因为这个漏产生过失呢，然后你就会失掉这个正道，所以这个就是你这样子的话，因为你有漏有烦恼，然后你就落在这个生死的一直在这样子循回生死。
So this afflictions will lead you astray. You will lose your way and no longer stay on the spiritual path, the kind of, say, Zen Dao will become like the right path, the kind of appropriate, skillful path to liberation. Instead, you end up going on all these side roads that end up in birth and death. You don't get free.
所以这个讲你就是失掉这个正道，所以这个就是轮回在生死，所以就会变成说我们就是要来直指这个漏，不要再来，所以变成我们要来修行，这样子来阻止这个漏。
So if we have outflows, then we begin the process of birth and death still, and so we're caught in this cycle. If we can cultivate the proper path, then we have a way to escape. So these afflictions, these leaks, keep us in samsara.
在这个佛学日典上面，他也有讲到漏啊，有3种漏，第一个就是欲漏，就是像我们欲界的这个漏，就是欲界的一切的烦恼，除了这个无明以外。
So in the Buddhist dictionary, it talks about the outflows have 3 kinds. There's the outflows in the desire realm.
第二个就是有漏，有漏呢，就是受戒、无受戒，这些一切所产生的这个烦恼，就是有漏。当然，这个就是要除掉这个无明。
So also the next one is in the form and formless heaven outflows. So these come from ignorance, come from ignorance.
然后第3种呢， 无明漏，无明，刚才我们讲的这个意漏有漏，再来就是无明漏，这个三界的这个无明啊，就是它是一个专门，因为我们讲12因缘里面，第一个就是讲无明，这个就是一个无明漏。
So the third one is that we have the affliction of ignorance. So here in this triple realm, we all have ignorance. We're trapped here because of our ignorance.
像因为你有一下子有这个无明以后，后面就产生形式然后名色六入，像这个身体方面，然后六入就是眼耳鼻舌身意然后爱取有生，然后老死像这一些都是有烦恼，所以这个是把它分成无明漏。
So in the third kind of affliction, the Wu Ming Lo, it ends up being the case that it Sanjitsu Wu Ming, it's kind of
就是无明，就是我们讲12种因缘里面
Okay, so it comes from, for instance, in the dependent origination, we have, for instance, ignorance, conditions, activities, and then that conditions consciousness, which goes, I believe, to name and form. And so this kind of fundamental ignorance that keeps us trapped in samsara.
所以这个在《涅盘经》里面他有鼓励说，三男子烦恼三种，就是刚才的三种意漏有漏无明漏然后就是三男子智者应当观这个三漏，所有的罪过，这个就是说我们要好好来修行，来研究这个三种漏。那今天晚上就是要再进一步讲到这个漏尽。
So the Nirvana Sutra talks about 3 types of outflows, which are what we're just given. The outflow that is in association with the desire realm. Then there's the 第二个漏是有漏 is kind of the form realm outflow, but I think it contains both the form and formless. And finally is the ignorance outflow. And so this, you want to be able to contemplate these as actually leading to affliction. They cause a lot of problems. You want to look at their disadvantages. So I think Jing Fosher just talked a little bit about the, actually I think I have the notes here, with regards to the outflows. And I think this is actually a very important topic for us in cultivation because in a very, I would say, visceral way, when we begin to cultivate, we no longer let our energy leak out. We begin to, we say, return the light and shine within. We begin to, rather than having our senses control us, we become able to use our senses wisely. And so I think this isn't a difficult experience to have. For instance, if you look at like an object of desire, it can be something like a car that you want, or a piece of a food that you want to eat, or as a person that you find very attractive. And you can almost feel your energy get sucked out of you as you kind of crave that whatever that is. And there's a kind of a little bit of a hollow feeling inside that you feel. That's the energy kind of just leaking out. And so you feel that with, let's say, greed has a particular experience. I think each of us maybe experience it slightly differently. I'm just describing it so you have a sense. Then there's, for instance, like anger, where you have a kind of a rush of energy, but that rush of energy isn't very stable. So if you've noticed, if you get really angry, you probably are really exhausted afterwards, because you're leaking out your energy in all these different ways. And then delusion is a lot of used up energy. I mean, I think if you watch yourself or others, when we are really caught up in a particular way of seeing things, that we are unable to have a flexibility of mind to accord with conditions, and it has to be this way or else. And then we have to think of all these, our mind starts to calculate and manipulate and force conditions or try to prove that I'm right. And there's a lot of work there, and that's another loss of energy. And so in Buddhism, those are the three main poisons, but there's many other afflictions. And if you look at the afflictions, they each have that kind of an experience to them where we lose our energy. Another element of them is that we lose our awareness of mind. As Jing Forger said, these afflictions or outflows can actually take over our mind, and then we become almost like slaves. We're no longer in control, but the affliction is in control. And oftentimes we just then have to be patient for the affliction to cease before we can go on with whatever we're trying to do. So for instance, if we don't catch the rising of anger before it gets into like a full-blown rage, once it gets going, it's very hard to just say, okay, I'm not going to be angry now. It's like we have to, go somewhere else, separate ourselves from the situation, breathe, and little bit by little bit let the anger subside, not keep fueling the anger. So that's actually why these outflows are important to learn about, because in our cultivation, we're trying not to leak, not to lose our energy, but then to use that energy in our own inner spiritual transformation and develop a kind of very even and expansive and grounded energy where it's not getting leaked out in many different ways. So I just kind of give it a kind of a more visceral, a more kind of concrete experience that you can find in your own life. I mean, oftentimes we know where our outflows are. We just look at the thing that is the most addictive thing for us. Is it watching? A lot of people are watching YouTube videos, but everyone here is watching the YouTube video here. So, unfortunately, I think our Dharma lectures are probably not that addictive. They're pretty calm and tame, but that's the case. You look and see what is it that you're addicted to, or what is it that you really get angry about, or where is it that you really have to always prove you're right. You find those couple of places, and you'll see those are the main outflows, and then little bit by little bit you refine them. 所以刚刚静佛就讲到这个漏呢，我想讲比较坦白一点，我们在修行当中，这个漏要很可以说小心啊，或者可以很理解啊，因为我们在修行就是不要是刚刚静佛说无漏，这个漏是什么呢？我想我们大家都有经验。比方说，如果我们是贪心啊，我们隐喻心啊，你可以感觉出来，我们一看到一个东西，我们真正贪求的，我们的心好像就跑到外面去了，我们的精神好像跑到外面去了，心里呢会有一点这个失望的一个感觉，然后要这个东西来给我们好像饱满一样，这个就是一个漏，因为我们不做主了，我们的这个心被拉走了。另外我们发脾气呢也是一样的，你看发脾气，你如果发很大，然后发完脾气呢，我们的精神就大概都没有了，都用完了，因为都漏掉了。或者我们如果无明啊，我们很什么是无明？我给一个例子，很多不同的无明，但是一个无明就是说我们一定要是对的，我们把我们看法看得很像我们这样子的想法一定是对的，不能有这个 flexibility， 不能有一个柔软性，不能配别人在做什么，我们就是一定要我们的方式，所以我们就心里一直在想来想去，想东想西，想要把这个事情做成我跟我真正我要的方式，这一把我们的精神也很多都漏掉了。所以这个是像贪嗔痴有这样子的一个方式，可以把我们的精神漏掉。 所以我们不要这样子做，我们就好好的来保护我们这个精神，就是用回光返照，或者想信佛是可能等一下会讲到这个戒定慧，也是一个非常好的方式来把我们这个精神呢，不要被漏掉，反而我们可以好好修行。怎么会发生呢？如果我们好好修行，掉我们的心情啊，我们的精神啊，就变得很平等、很饱满，然后我们没有一直被我们的六根所拉来拉去，我们可以当主。
好，那所以这个落尽呢，这就是我们最重要是落尽比丘。落尽比丘，它意思就是讲这个烦恼已经断尽的这个比丘，然后他已经证了阿罗汉果的一个比丘。刚才我们讲过了，那这个最重要，这个他一定像这个落尽比丘的话，他一定就是证得了这个漏尽通的。这个漏尽通不是一般人或者是外道他能够得到，这个要经过修行，然后经过守戒各方面才能够得到这个六通的，最后就是漏尽通。所以这个就是在佛家方面的一个最后的第6个漏尽通，它一定有这个六尽通的。
So this particular ability to be free of outflows is what an arhat has. And they're able to realize this through their cultivation. It's not something ordinary people have. It's not like we'll just one day all of a sudden realize freedom from outflows without having done cultivation. And so this is also considered the 6th spiritual power. There's 5 other ones, and then this is the 6th one. And this is, you could say, a special quality of Buddhism is that it allows you to realize this state of freedom from outflows.
所以这个我们这个佛家的这个六通，这个就是3界里面呢，这个最算极到修行极果的一个漏尽通，所以他这个是所有的烦恼都没有了，都断尽了，所以这个就是算漏尽通的这个比丘，漏尽比丘。所以这个在极乐世界里面，假如大家能够升到那里，就是会比这个我们世间上的这个六尽就是漏尽比通还要更快乐，所以这个是他所发的愿。
极果是什么东西啊？
极果就是极到最尖端的这个果位了，3层的这个。
极果3层之极果。Okay, so to be able to cultivate, to realize arhatship, then you realize, you could say, the very highest of the here's the 3 vehicles, the kind of the supreme state, and you've really have profound wisdom that you've gotten rid of afflictions completely. So this is what it means to have no outflows. So this is actually a very important part of our practice.
Yeah.
And in the Pure Land, they have, you could say, freedom from outflows as that kind of happiness.
在释迦牟尼佛的时候呢，我们会阿弥陀经里面会读到摩诃戒宾那，阿耨罗多摩诃戒宾那，这个摩诃戒宾那也是大阿罗汉。那其实他以前呢，他是一个国王， 然后这个他还没有去参加这个出家的时候呢，他有一天呢，他跟着他的大臣里面，然后就到公园去的时候呢，那刚好我现在就是讲这个他如何证道圣果的一个故事，所以他就碰到这个守卫城的几个商人在跟跟他讲这个佛法真佛陀的故事，佛陀在讲法，然后他听了以后，他就跟他国王跟大臣呢，就去守卫城去见这个佛陀。
So there is a monk named Venerable Mahakapina, I believe. Somebody can correct me if I got it wrong from the Chinese. But he was a great arhat, and before he became a monk, he was a king. And when he was a king, he would go out with his officials into the kind of the park that was there. And when he was in the park, there were some merchants who were talking about the Buddha, saying how wonderful the Buddha was, that he had profound wisdom, and that he was somebody who could really learn from. So the king, with his retinue of officials, went to visit the Buddha in Shravasti.
这个故事是在那个法纪经里面第6篇，第6篇这个。
It's from the Dhammapada, verse number 6.
他这个，因为他去佛陀，他透过神通知道说国王跟他的这个大臣，要见他，所以他而且佛陀他知道他可以证阿罗汉果的，所以佛陀他特别去这个河边的一个树下，一个榕树下来等他们。
So the Buddha knew that the king was actually coming because the Buddha had his spiritual powers and could see that the king was coming with all his officials. And he could also see that the king had the potential to realize arhatship. So the Buddha went to a river to await the arrival of the king. Somebody help with the Sanskrit word. It is Mahakapina. Great.
Yeah.
Somebody put it in the chat box too.
Yeah.
Okay.
所以这个国王就他们一票人来，他在树下看到佛陀在那里，而且会放出这个六种的这个吉祥的这个光一直在发光，所以他们就靠近佛陀，然后来顶礼问讯各方面，然后这样子的时候，佛陀就跟他们来说法，然后他们听法了之后呢，他们就领悟到了就证悟了，然后他们就马上就说要加入僧团。
So then they saw the Buddha, and the Buddha was, you could say, very radiant, having many different kinds of lights coming out of, you could say, maybe his person. He had a kind of an aura, or kind of a radiance, and so they paid their respect. And after the Buddha spoke Dharma to them, many of them had a profound awakening, and also left home, wanted to become monastics to cultivate.
所以这个他们这个皇宫里面的这个皇后啊，也听到说国王跟那个大臣，他们都去守卫城，去见佛，所以他也这个皇后也跟着他们的大臣的妻子呢，他们也就跟着一起去找他的国王跟他的大臣，所以当他们看到佛陀在休息的地方，也看见了这个佛陀身上放出的这个光，他们也是跟佛陀来顶礼。
So the wives, you could say, so the you could say the Wang Ho, which is I think the queen,
yeah.
heard about the king and all the officials going to see the Buddha in Shravasti. So then he got all the officials' wives as well. They all went together to go and see if they could find where the king was. And then they can, so when they went there, they saw Dang Tamen Dao, they saw the Buddha, was resting there. They saw the Buddha also emitting light. And so when they saw the light, they also paid their respect, bowing down to the Buddha's feet.
然后这个他们看，但是佛陀他运用神通不给他们看到他的这个国王他们所以他们就没有看见。因为就是说，假如说他们看见自己的丈夫国王，然后已经穿了这个黄色袈裟了，一定而且那个剃了这个头发，内心会受干扰。而且这样子的话，他就没有办法来听法，所以国王就这个时候呢，这个佛陀就跟他说：“你们先坐下，等一下你们可以看到国王的。”
So when the queen arrived with all the women. The Buddha used his spiritual abilities so that they couldn't see the king and their husbands, all the different officials, because a number of them had already left home. So they were already in the monk's robes and had shaved heads, and he thought that if they saw them, then they would be distracted by their husbands already had left home and maybe be unhappy. And so, and that wouldn't help them in terms of learning the Dharma. So the Buddha then said, okay, you'll see your husband in a moment, but I'll first speak some Dharma for you.
所以他们听到说，等一下我可以看到我的这个先生，他们很高兴，他们就听法，那就佛陀就跟他们讲法，那讲法以后，这些太太们他们就证到了出国。
So the wives were happy. Oh, we'll see their husbands in a moment. And so they were happily listening to the Dharma that the Buddha was speaking. And after they heard the Dharma, the women became first stage arhats.
所以后来佛陀就给他们就用神通一样，就把它变出来了。然后就他们看到，他的国王跟大臣们都已经出家成比丘了。然后他们就也是向佛陀来请求，希望他们能够出家为比丘尼。佛陀就说：“好啊，那你就去守卫城，然后去尼众那边，你可以去参加尼众的僧团。”后来他们这些太太们，他们不久也是证了阿罗汉果。
So the women, so they were very delighted by the Dharma talk and became first stage arhats. And then the Buddha said, okay, here are your husbands. And so he made them visible again. And the wives saw all their husbands were monks. And so that was very unexpected. But they then requested the Buddha if they could become nuns. And the Buddha said, okay, go into the Shravasti and you can join the nun community. And they all also, in a fairly short time, realized arhatship.
后来他们出家，然后就回那个佛陀的地方僧团里面集市集孤独园那边，然后所以他们常常会听到这个白天或者晚上呢，他这个摩诃戒宾他就是原来是国王。他常常会提到说：“我是那么的辛苦，那么的快乐，这样子，就一直在讲，一天讲好几次。那讲的这个比丘们都听到了，然后他们就去跟佛陀报告。”
这边。So the during the daytime. Or the nighttime, during the rest time, Venerable Mahakapina, he would constantly say to himself, "Wow, I am so fortunate. I am so happy. I'm so fortunate." He did this so much that the monks heard him saying these things to himself.
所以这个佛陀就跟大家讲啊，说，你知道啊，这个摩诃这边啊，他已经领悟到这个佛法这个东西，而且是法喜。他讲这个我好快乐，这个就是法喜，这个是由内心宁静发出来的，所以他而且他重复的来讲这些，他这个是一个涅槃的这个喜悦。
So the Buddha said, so the monks went to ask the Buddha, asking if Venerable Mahakapina maybe was thinking about his life as a king beforehand. So he was thinking, oh, how wonderful it was, how wonderful it was. And they were maybe concerned about him. So the Buddha told them that actually Venerable Mahakapina was an arhat, that he was completely free of afflictions. His heart was peaceful and at ease. And so he's happy all the time. And his happiness is like the happiness of nirvana.
所以这个就是一个国王，他证道，他能够了解到涅槃这个欢喜之乐，这个就是一个正法人修行的一个正法的方法，所以这个很重要的。然后我们再来看一下这个。究竟阿罗汉他是怎么样子的情况
？So now we will look into what is the state of the arhat.
这个其实这个也是在法纪经里面第7篇的第7篇里面。
So in the Dhammapada verse number 7, there's some more stories.
就是当你修行正念现前的时候，精进修行的时候呢，这个就好像是天鹅，天鹅在飞行，然后他们的一种非常殊胜，什么事情也不执着，所以在佛陀跟很多比丘有一年呢，在王寿成结下安居以后呢，他要结束之前的2个礼拜呢，他就佛陀就跟这个比丘讲，我们等一下要离开王守城。
在哪里边？So here's another story from the Dhammapada. So the Buddha told the monks, 一年在王舍城 I'm not sure where that is. So it went to a particular city. Says to all the monks, there is 有一年在 one year we were in this place, and we were doing the summer vasa. During the summer vasa, 2 weeks before it finished, Buddha told all the monks some words. So after we speak, we will leave this place into Wangsa-san, Rajgir, we'll leave Rajgir. And so, 要比丘们
做好准备。
So it said, please be prepared, we're going to leave now.
所以这个所谓准备呢，就是把准备袈裟啦，或者是把它弄好了，就是因为要离开这样子，所以这个他们就有看见这个大迦叶呢，也是在洗袈裟，然后他们这些比丘们就想说，王舍城内外呢。有很多信徒都是非常仰慕大迦叶，因为大迦叶他是行头恨的，所以他供养一切所有，因为他会得到一切供养所有的物品这样子，然后 这样子的话，那大家说要追索佛陀，要离开他们，这样子，就是有人在嫉妒这个，嫉妒说他可以得到很多的东西。
我们理解，这哪边开始 ？So,
准备了。
So the monks 刚开始，so the monks started preparing their robes and bowl to get ready so that they can leave. And so 有些however, some bhikshus took a look at Mahakashapa, Venerable Mahakashapa, who was also washing his robes, and in their minds they had some jealousy. They had some thoughts, which was this in the Rajgir, daily inside and outside, Venerable Mahakashapa has many disciples, and also people who admire him. 并且供养一切所 So therefore he has able to receive all the offerings he needs, whatever he wants. 这种形象 so they had this kind of jealousy, you say. So 这种形象大家是却有宣佛陀离开他们这样做对吗 So
这个你看这个不准，要看整个意见。
Okay,
所以这个后来15天以后呢，在他们要离开这个王舍城的时候呢，然后佛陀就指定说，这个大家就留下来，这样子，再跟着，因为他要留一些人留下来在王舍城。
So 15 days later, when it was time to go, the Buddha said that Venerable Mahakashapa can stay at Rajgir.
所以那当时的这些比丘的就讲出来了，就是怪不得你知道就是说我们所意料到的，一定会叫大家是留下来在这个王舍城，然后佛陀就告诫他们。比丘们啊，你们认为大家是执着王舍城的这个信徒的供养吗？你假如说是这样子的话，你们就错了。大家是奉行我的指示才留下来，大家是他不执着一切事物的。
So the Buddha, after when all the monks were leaving, said, Venerable Mahakashapa, you can stay here with a couple other monks in this area. And so the other monks who were jealous of Venerable Mahakashapa thought, I see now, he's, wants to stay, and so the Buddha basically told all the monks, okay, monks, do you think that Venerable Mahakashapa is attached to all the offerings that he receives here? He's attached to all the offerings. That's why he doesn't want to leave, and I asked him to stay. So there's actually no. He's staying here out of a heart of service.
所以这个故事里面也是在讲说，阿罗汉呢，他行脚就是他走到哪里呢，他是不执着特定的地方的，他不会执着，是像上面的故事是佛陀指定他要留下来的，所以，然后阿罗汉呢，他因为他已经证到没有我还有我所的这个观念，他是没有这样子的，是我的或者是我所有的都没有的，没有这种观念。
So in this story, we'll see that an arhat, like Venerable Mahakashapa, doesn't attach to anything. He's not attached to where he's staying. And so in our cultivation, if we want to be able to get to a place of no outflows, then we need to let go of our conceptions of me and mine. I think maybe it might be useful to look at these stories a little bit. So clearly, there's a teaching here about what does it mean to be awakened. And if we use these arhats as a kind of role model, I think it's kind of interesting to kind of take a look at. So if we look at the story with Venerable Mahakashapa, he's able to live very, very simply. Although he receives offerings, he doesn't let the offerings kind of create a kind of attachment in his heart. And that's really what, as monastics, what we try to cultivate is to be able to feel the blessings. We're able to receive people's offerings, but then not end up, you could say, attached to it, so that it's kind of quote unquote my thing. It's actually something that somebody, out of their kindness, donated to the monastery. So that's kind of the spirit behind a kind of a monastic approach to offerings. 所以这个我想呢有重点可以看一下这个摩诃迦叶当我们的榜样样。你看他拿到这个供养呢，他就不执着。他是虽然有很多供养，他心里不执着，他是完全是自由的。所以这个对我们来说一个好榜样。我们受到什么呢？就不要执着，我们可以还是很感恩心。特别我们出家众是个福田身，是让人可以供养的。然后我们不要有执着，反而我们用这个供养可以来修这个菩萨道修行的这个原因。
好。另外就是还有阿罗汉，像什么样子的一个形象呢？好，这里也是这个在佛陀的这个法纪经里面，第六篇里面有一个固肉磐石的这个故事，这个就是在讲阿罗汉他是不会被肥，就是来损毁他，或者是来褒奖他，毁誉他都不会动的。
So here's another story from the Dhammapada verses, number 6. And so this one talks about Ru Tong. So this is the 6th verse in the Dhammapada. And it says that Ru Tong, Xiangu, was very, very steady. And Bu Shito Bu Wei Feng Dong, just like the rock is not moved by the wind. The wise one is also not moved by slander and criticism.
当时呢，有一位也是比丘呢，他叫做拔提，他们孤独园其实孤独园的一位比丘，他这个比丘呢，个子矮小，然后大家都这样子矮个子的这个拔提来称呼他。
So there was a monk who was named Bhati, and he was very short, and so people referred to him as Short Bhati.
这样子来称他没有关系，还有时候拉拉他的鼻子，还有拉拉他的耳朵，还有拍拍他的肩膀，然后也跟他说：“大叔你好，快乐吗？”这样子，你的生活烦不烦啊？这样子来嘲笑他。
So his name is somebody wrote the name Badrika, which is helpful. Badrika. And so people just didn't call him Short Badrika, but then people pull on his ear, on his nose, and say, "How are you doing?" And I think he felt like he was being made fun of.
所以他那这样子来戏弄这个拔提，但是拔提呢，他一点也不动，也不生气，也不回嘴，所以心地非常善良。然后他内心呢，看了跟他的神情都非常的安静、安详、宁静、安详。
So Badrika didn't actually get angry at all. He stayed unmoved in his heart. Whatever people said, if they made fun of him and various things, he didn't actually, you could say, get moved by it. So he maintained his peace of heart, peace of mind.
经过这样子的佛陀就知道法体的情况，佛陀知道，他然后就跟他说啊，各位比丘啊，你知道啊，阿罗汉啊，他永远不会发脾气的，他也不会来苛责别人，来骂别人，他也不会憎恨别人。阿罗汉就像一座山一样，山不为风所动，山当然它不会被风来吹一下就摇动，不会的。阿罗汉也是不会像被这个非意所动，就是说不会的，不会你说他好他就高兴，说他不好他就非常悲哀，不会的，不会这样说来被摇动的。
So the Arhat, so Badrika was, you could say, awakened, so he didn't actually get affected by these criticisms or people making fun of him. And so the Buddha then mentioned that it's the case that an Arhat, if you make fun of them, slander them, they don't have any anger, and they don't respond in anger. They won't scold you and say harsh words, because an Arhat is like a mountain, is unmovable, just like the wind cannot just blow down a mountain. Similarly, praise and blame or criticism, they don't move an Arhat. The Arhat is always happy.
所以这个后来这些的比丘才知道，哦，原来这个拔提他已经证了这个阿罗汉果了。
So then those monks realized, oh my goodness, the Venerable Badrika is already an Arhat.
所以这个就是一个阿罗汉的一个形象表现啊。
So this is one of the ways that an Arhat you can see is that they're not moved by praise or blame. I'm going to say maybe a brief story on that one. That was very, very striking to me because I heard it so many times. When I was at CDDB, they would play tapes by Master Hua in the dining hall. And there's always a line that struck me, was that Master Hua would say, okay, people are going to criticize me, and I think probably there are people who criticize Master Hua. And he said, I don't want you guys to defend me. I don't want you to kind of fight back. He said, what you can say, if somebody criticizes me, says your teacher is such and such or does this and that, you can say thank you for helping my teacher work out his karma, work out his karma. And you wouldn't give this feedback if you didn't really want to help him out, and Master Hua says, best way is that you can bow to them. you bow to them. And I was really struck by that because oftentimes we want other people to defend us, to say, oh, no, my teacher's not like that at all. You got it all wrong. My teacher's actually the best, right? Master Hua says, no need to do that. And that's really striking because I'm the kind of person who really cares about people seeing me kind of in a certain light, want to look good. And so, especially if somebody's criticizing me for something I didn't do or kind of saying something, then there's all the internal mechanisms that want to kind of make things right. But that's actually not the really skillful approach, not like what Master Hua is able to do, and say, okay, whenever people criticize me, no problem. They're just teaching me, and the best is that you can bow to them. 所以讲这个有个故事，就是上人他记得我们在万佛城是会播那个录音带，上人的这样讲法。我有一句我们会常常听到，是说有人会来批评啊，或诽谤那个上人。然后我记得在录音带上，上人就说：“你这样子人批评我、诽谤我呢，你就不要跟他们吵架。”这样怎么来回答？说：“哦，你是因为要我的老师好，这样子。”你就告诉我们这样子的事情，然后你可以拜他们，说不要跟他们吵架，然后我觉得这个蛮有意思的，因为平常一般的人呢，像我有做错事，甚至都不做错事情，然后有人来批评还怎么样，我们就 就会有发脾气，好像别人看不起我们，还是我们就不高兴。但是我们像佛陀呢，他是没有这样子的心态，他是一切都可以包容的。就上人呢，他是一切可以包容的。有人来批评他呢，怎么样呢？他不是说你要把我们保护我，要给他们辩论掉，反而说你听他们的，然后跟他们拜，知道他在帮我消业障的。我觉得这个是蛮有意思的一个上人的故事。
对啊，这个在佛殿有听过几次，所以就是说我们有这样子的上人师父啊，那他也是希望说弟子不要为那一些不要去争吵，甚至于我们都还要来礼拜他们，这样子的一个刚好不同的方向，这样子就是我们修行最重要的。好，我们再来继续再讲这个《法纪经》里面呢，第6篇，第6章第9篇有一个呢，就是说我们修行最重要就是要能够少烦恼，最好能够解脱自己，解脱，就是说没有烦恼了，这个是最重要。那这个故事呢，就是说你不管怎么样子，我们要怎样子来少烦恼，就是要靠自己；要怎样子来解脱，也是要靠自己。
So here's the 9th story in the Dhammapada, or from the 9th verse, and it talks about how we want to get rid of our afflictions, or kind of them go, so we can realize liberation.
这个故事呢，也是发生在这个守卫城，那这个是一个夫妻呀，一对夫妇夫妻呀，他们这个叫做谭米夫妇啦，这样子。那有一天呢，他这个丈夫告诉他这个妻子，他妻子那时候刚好怀孕，然后他想一想说，人生还是出家好，他想修行，出家修行。然后他的妻子就说：“你这样子嘛，你等孩子出生以后再出家好了。”
So there was a husband and wife couple in Shravasti, and they were living there, and then the wife became pregnant, and then the husband, though, later was thinking to himself, "Oh, you know what? I've kind of been going back and forth about wanting to leave home or not." I thought, well, maybe I want to leave home. And he told his wife, and so his wife says, "You should wait for after the child is born before you leave home."
所以这个，然后他听太太的话，那孩子他后来就诞生了。诞生了以后，以后他又跟这个太太提这个出家的事情，那这个太太就是说，那你等小孩子会走路的时候，你再出家吧。
So the husband then listened to his wife, waited for the child to grow up a little bit, and then told the wife again, "Oh, I think I want to leave home." The wife said, "Wait a moment. Wait until the child actually grows up a little bit."
所以他就这样子跟妻子来要求，但是妻子都一直这样子在拖延。他说：“那我应该要自己来努力，来解脱轮回的这个痛苦啦。”他后来他就稍微过一段时间，他就决定他自己要出家去当比丘，所以他就去到佛陀那里，那佛陀就给他鼓励他精进来修行。他不久之后，他就证了这个阿罗汉果。
So his this happened quite a few times. Finally, he thought to himself, you know what, I really need to cultivate if I'm really going to get free from samsara, free from birth and death. So finally he went to the Buddha and asked to leave home. And the Buddha agreed, and in a fair short amount of time, he actually realized arhatship.
所以证了阿罗汉果以后呢，他就是继续修行，到几年以后，他又回家，他回到家里，然后跟他的太太跟孩子就来传授这个，就是来教他们佛法，他的孩子也因为这样子，孩子也出家了。
So finally, he became an arhat, and he continued with his cultivation. And after some time had passed, he decided to go back home to his original home, and there he met his family, his previous family, and he taught them the Dharma. And after he taught them Dharma, many of his children also wanted to leave home.
那这个小孩子出家以后呢，也不久以后也证了阿罗汉果了。哇，这个小孩子也证了果，然后他就也是后来他们也都回去再去看他妈妈。他这个妈妈，他就是他的太太，他就是那个老比丘的这个太太啊。他想，既然我的丈夫跟我的孩子都出家，那最好我自己也出家。所以这个太太她也出去出家了。
So after some time, I think just one child. I think he had one child, and so the child also left home, and very quickly became an arhat. And so the next time they visited back, so I think the father and son were both arhats. And so the mom, seeing the two of them, thought, my husband has left home, my son has left home. I should leave home as well. So then she went off to leave home.
所以这个太太她也出家了以后呢，他们也都很认真修行，后来也证了阿罗汉果。
So the wife also left home and was very vigorous in her practice and realized arhatship.
所以有一次呢，在这个比丘这个聚会的时候，这个场合里面呢，就有人告诉佛陀关于这个坛米出家修行，然后来引导他们整个家庭的人来修行，就是太太跟儿子来修行，然后做正果的事情。
So then somebody told a story to the Buddha, saying that this person named 他名字叫什么？这个男生 Tammy. Okay, Tammy. His name is Tammy. He came to leave home, and he, realized arhatship, and he also brought his son, who also left home, and then also his wife, also all left home, and so they were asking the Buddha to explain what happened.
那佛陀就跟大家说啊，比丘们啊，这个自走不要为了自己追求利益或者别人的利益啊，造作恶业，获取财物或者成功。相反的，自走只知道理解奉行佛法啊，自行从轮回中解脱出来。人只能自己努力解脱生死轮回，无法依赖别人。所以这个就是说，我们要怎样子能够得到这个少烦恼，要能够得到解脱，不再轮回生死，就是要依靠我们自己努力。
So you're saying that as monks, when you cultivate, you don't want to do anything that you can get self-benefit but creates bad karma. Rather, we want to really serve the Dharma and really get free. And so this is, we want to be able to be self-reliant and not be reliant on other people, not to be dependent on other people.
好，我们再讲一个修行是不分这个年纪大小的，最重要就是要自己能够知道方法，然后来努力，然后你会得到像佛陀在世的时候，佛陀他就有这个能力来观察一个人。那我们现在不在的话，那我们最重要也要有善知识，像我们的仙公上人，我们要多听仙公上人的教导， 还有多听他的所有的讲经的一些事情，所以的一个修行最重要。所以我想另外再来还有点时间来讲一个沙弥年轻沙弥的修行。
So there's another. So the emphasis that we want to cultivate now, we want to be able to really make that something we do right now. So if you want to, you can say maybe good thing to do is we listen to Master Hua's Dharma. You can listen to his tape lectures, because also having a good and wise advisor is helpful. So we can take Master Hua as our good and wise teacher and learn the Dharma from him. So a little bit of time, we will tell one more story.
这样子这个刚才我们讲盘提盘提他是守卫城的一个有名的人物的儿子，他非常年轻，他就出家，然后他出家为沙弥，然后出家后的第8天呢，他就跟着舍利弗一起去化缘，在半路上就看到一个龙人在引导这个水去龙田里面，然后就问舍利弗，这个尊者没有心事的水能够随人的意被引导到任何地方吗？哇，这个是一个他一个年纪小小的，他就有这样子这个很好的一个思考。他就是说，我们的心是不是能够像水来引导到他要去所要到的地方，就好像你要种龙舟屋要水就把它引导到水田里面。我们的心可不可以像引导过去这样子？
So there's a story about a young boy who also left home in Shravasti named Pandita. And so when he was a Shami, on the 8th day of his time as a Shami, he followed Venerable Shariputra out on alms round. So as they were going out, this little Shami saw a farmer who was irrigating his fields, directing the water to certain areas. And so the Shami asked Venerable Shariputra, are our minds like that? Can we actually direct it? Can we actually make it go to certain places? So this is a very profound question. As a little boy is already asking this kind of reflective question.
这个舍利弗说可以水可以被引导到任何地方。然后他有这种观念以后呢，他们还是再继续他们再继续行走，然后的观察，所以这个很重要。修行就是要能够多观察，闻思修，这个就是非常重要的一个闻思修行的3个重点。
So the Venerable Shariputra said, yes, just like the water can be channeled, the mind can also be channeled. And so then they continued walking and continued to reflect on this statement. And so this is important because in our cultivation, we want to be able to hear the Dharma, but then we want to reflect on it, and we'll really put it into practice. That's actually the most important thing.
所以他在路上，他们也看到像木匠来切割木头或者是来刨木头来做车轮这些呢，他就在思考，我们的心可以也是用到引导任何做的方向，你要做什么，心就可以做什么。所以这个心事可以做成任何的东西。拥有心事，那我们最重要就是要能够控制我们的内心来修行清净。所以他这个小沙弥 其实就是舍利弗的这个小沙弥，他是非常用心在思考东西。
So the Shami saw that there was a person who was working with wood, maybe a carpenter or a lumberjack or something. They were cutting up the wood, so he observing how that you need skill to do these various things. And so he saw that in the heart, if we don't train it, then it can go anywhere. So rather what we want to do is we want to train the heart. So as a young boy, he was reflecting in this way. I can say, John,
Okay.
I have a quote that similar to that. 讲完这个故事吗？
还没有。
OK， 我看你要跑到的地方。
Yeah， 我想这样子，他后来呢，就他们回去跟舍利弗，所以这个就回到自己的房间，然后这个小沙弥他就好好的来静下来，再观身，然后这时候呢，诸天的天神。还有这个所有的环境都非常来保持宁静，来帮助他禅修。不久，他就证到三果。
So after they returned back to the monastery, the venerable little Shami went back to his room, and there he quieted down his mind, and he saw the devas helping out in terms of creating a good environment, and before long, he actually realized the third stage of arhatship.
也，然后这个时候，舍利弗，他在打坐，舍利弗，就想要去看他的这个小沙弥，然后走到他这个房间的地方，然后佛陀知道呢，就想这样子不可以，因为他知道盘底这个小沙弥。他可以证阿罗汉果的，所以他就赶快去指使这个舍利弗，不要给他去打扰这个盘体的这个房间。
So Venerable Shariputra was meditating, but then he had a thought that he wanted to see this young Shami, so he went to the Shami's room to knock on the door. But the Buddha saw that that Venerable or the young Shami Pandita was could become an arhat, so he stopped Venerable Shariputra from knocking on the door, so that not to disturb the Shami.
所以佛陀他也走来这个小沙弥的这个房间门口，然后这样子，舍利弗碰到佛陀就跟他问一些问题，所以给这个。舍利弗没有时间进去这个小沙弥的房间。后来这个小沙弥就在这个第8天的时候，他就证到阿罗汉果。
So the Buddha was there in front went to the room, and so Venerable Shariputra showed up. The Venerable Shariputra asked the Buddha some questions, and the Buddha answered, and so that so then the Venerable Shariputra didn't disturb the Shramanera Pandita, the novice Pandita. So after the 8th day of his practice, he actually became an arhat.
所以佛陀就跟他说就跟舍利弗说当一个人精进修行的时候呢，甚至于天神都会来护持他的。然后我个人就是会他知道他要证果，所以他也亲自来门口来指使这个舍利弗，你进入这个盘体的房间，所以这样子盘体他才能够证到阿罗汉果。
So here, the Buddha said to Venerable Shariputra, so the novice Pandita, he was very vigorous in his practice, so vigorous that the gods and various spiritual beings all came to protect him, and also myself. To help support him in his practice, I came to his door so that people would not disturb him in his practice, and so this is supporting him in his realization.
从这个故事中里面呢，就是这个也是《法华经》第6篇里面，这个就是说， 我们修行都是要常常要用头脑、用心来思考，就是刚才我讲的要闻思修，这个3方面，然后就你可以这样子来努力的话，就不会错了，就是这个方向一样。
So here, this also became a verse in the Dhammapada, and I think the main principle is that you want to reflect. You want to use your mind to reflect on what we learn. I think there's also a Dhammapada phrase that I really like, is saying, "What brings you more joy than your entire family, all your families and friends?" And the Buddha says, "A well-trained mind." And then he says, "What brings you more pain and suffering than all your enemies, all those people who are hostile to you?" He says, an untrained mind, a mind that's not trained. I find it to be a very interesting reflection, because it puts the responsibility for our suffering in ourselves. That actually, oftentimes we blame other people for our problems. This person did this person did that, they created the suffering for me. And we're saying, actually, your untrained mind will create more suffering for you than that. And sometimes we think that our happiness comes from the people around us. We're with those people we really love, who really praise us, who make us feel like we're important. And we just point out, well, actually, that's not really what makes you truly happy. True happiness comes from a trained mind. So regardless of who you're with, you're always happy. 所以我讲在那个法句经里面也有一个经文，就是讲到是说什么让我们更高兴，比在跟我们一切的朋友啊、那个家人啊等等，会更有帮助的。那个佛陀就说是我们的心被训练好的，是对我们很大帮助。就什么会对我们害处很大，比我们一切的敌人啊、坏情况啊还不好。佛陀就是说，我们这个心没有被训练的，这个是非常重要。因为把我们这个看我们的烦恼啊、问题啊，不是往外去抱怨啊，或者是说不好，反而是往内去观。我的心怎么不定，对不对？不管我们在什么好的情况，如果我们心是没有训练的，反而我们会把这个很好的地方跟这个非常烦恼的地方。如果我们在一个地方不是这么好的，但是我们心是非常清净的但是虽然这个地方可能不是最理想的，我们心里还可以是很稳定的、快乐的。好，
有问题？
有问题吗？什么问题？是说法师，我们这个时候的人，是不是比以前的人笨？就我们现在的人是不是比以前的人笨？佛陀时代的人，随根就正果了，随便就正果了。OK， 我想他们不是这么随便正果的，他们是很用功正果的。感觉好容易。对，我想我们没有听到更多这个故事，但是我想在佛陀时代，他们是说那个时候人的根气是比较好，就他们听到佛法就不是这么困难可以正果，因为他们可以说心已经有一个清净心，他们的道德也有道德，他们就也有这个修行到一个地步，可以在佛陀的时候来出生的时候来学佛法，是非常难得的。所以我们看这个情况，只是看到就说最后的一个，像你看个 movie 这个电影一样，你只看最后几分钟，哇，他们都这样的成果成阿罗汉。我没有看到另外那个电影非常长的很多别的东西发生。所以我们呢，可以说我们就是可以用他们当一个榜样一样，一个方向一样，然后一步一步来走这条路。
所以关于这个最重要 我们知道我们有八难啊，八难就是说遇佛不刚好没有遇到这个佛陀这个时段，所以这个是一种难，因为你遇到在佛陀的时候，佛陀知道哪一个人他可以正果，他都知道了，不是说那时候每一个人都不是每一个人了，不是哦，就是你要有修学佛法的，所以这个就是说刚好他有遇到这个时段时机，刚好又碰到这个佛陀在，这个就是八难，像我们现在是八难之里面的有这种八种难，就是你没有办法遇到佛陀，然后时间也不对，所以这个非时不是时候，所以变成说，其实我们现在人不会比以前笨了，也不会比以前怎么样子，我们现在人都是蛮聪明的，因为其实讲起来，在末法时代是很多烦恼的，这个末法时代烦恼很多，然后我们又没有遇到这个佛的这个时代，所以就这样子，所以也不用泄气。我想说，我们就是认真来修行，然后我们最重要能够多发愿，那最重要的还是鼓励我们多念佛，去阿弥陀佛那里修行是最好、最快，这个是真正的一个最容易的方法。
在阿弥陀佛世界，我们都可以成佛，不只是成阿罗汉。那个另外可以说，我们现在神这个时代呢，不是可以说是笨，反而是说我们的就是说平常我们那个末法时代人会很会争，很会吵架，然后像我们看我们现在世界看，很容易我们怎么样两边都会来争来争去。
环境，
对，我们环境
不同，
所以我们就是不同环境，每个时代不同环境。但是我知道上人也特别说，如果我们心是正法修行，就是正法时代。
对呀。
如果我们心常常跟别人争，就是末法时代。所以看我们的心是怎么样的。So people asked about the thing, thinking that wow, in the time of the Buddha, people could become arhats so easily. Is it because now people are really stupid, and then they were unable to wake up? Well, one way to look at it is that these people woke up because of their cultivation. We're just seeing the very last bit of their cultivation career, you could say, when they wake up. But if you look at the full movie, right, you would see that they had many, many years, maybe many eons of practice beforehand, before waking up. They had the good fortune, but that good fortune wasn't random. They actually planted the seed so that they could meet the Buddha and wake up. And so, but at the same time, we don't want to be discouraged to say, oh, therefore now cultivation doesn't reap any rewards. That's not the attitude. It's actually to say, actually even more, we need to cultivate, because if we don't, then we can easily get pulled into all the afflictions of the current times. Jing Fosher said that one of the best ways is just recite the Buddha's name. You can go to the Pure Land, and that's a very good place to practice. Yeah, and in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land, we can all become Buddhas, not just arhats. Okay, I think the time is pretty much up.
Yeah.
And so maybe we want to say tomorrow we have a Lunar New Year celebration at BBM from 8:30 to 10 a.m. You should be able to see us on YouTube or on our Zoom link. So please join if you have the time. It's a chance to recite Om Mani Padme Hum and listen to some Dharma reflections for the new year. So yeah, hi Oma.
我想可以提前，我们有佛期在27号，就2月27号，下面27、28，然后1、2、3、4，好像5， 这样子的一个佛期，我们一样会有八关斋戒，然后写牌位，然后我们会做佛像回向，所以先跟大家来公告这个好消息。
So on the 12th is Lunar New Year. 我们每天会有一个新年快乐的活动，从8点半到10点钟。然后如果有人想，我们27号到3月5号有个佛期，大家也欢迎可以参加。好，这样子我想我们就这样子，我们可以回向功德。May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. 3 bows. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master.
Okay, 阿弥陀佛，大家新年快乐。
Yeah.